Hello, Anuja. Thank you very, very much for being part of our interview today. This is we are at Fever FM, and this is brought to you by Together We Can project, where we are just trying to talk and educate about different topics, especially relevant within the South Asian community. So please could you tell me a little bit about your job?
Right, yes, I'm a part-time dementia advisor for Wolverhampton, and my job entails if somebody's diagnosed with dementia, is going out to them and their carer to make them understand what dementia is, the type of dementia they've got, and to signpost them to what is available to actually help them.
Thank you very much.
That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Okay, so would you be able to give us almost kind of like a simple, well, I know it's not simple, but, you know, an overall definition of what dementia is?
Okay.
And I know that it's often described as an umbrella term for loss of memory. So could you just go into a bit more detail about that, please?
Right. When we talk about dementia, like quite quickly you said, it's an umbrella term. And by that, what we mean is there's different types of dementias. So you've got Alzheimer's, vascular, frontotemporal, a mixed dementia, and so many others. And I think a very simple way to explain that, you know, if you've got the word fruit, there's different types of fruit. So it's the same thing. You've got dementia, but there's so many different types. And we know we do have sometimes thinking, oh no, I haven't got Alzheimer's, I've got dementia. But it's educating people that dementia is an umbrella term.
Yep. Is there any type that's more common?
There tends to be Alzheimer's and vascular tends to be the most common.
Okay, thank you. Would you be able to tell me a little bit about statistics in the UK and who's affected?
Yeah. Okay. There's from the last before the pandemic, it was 850,000 people living with dementia, and we would say now it's probably about 900,000, and about 30,000 of that is not diagnosed because of the pandemic.
Okay,
it's
right.
Like all health conditions, you know, the diagnosis has just not taken place. And also out of that 42,000, you know, have young onset dementia. And by that, we mean under 65.
Okay, thank you. So I've often heard, and also through my own research, we hear that dementia, it's a progressive disease. And you mentioned early onset dementia as well. What does it mean by dementia is a progressive disease?
Right. Progressive in the sense that there's no cure. We can't halt it at all.
Okay.
At the moment, you know, if you've got Alzheimer's, that particular type of dementia, there's medication which might just slow down the progression, but it doesn't stop it. So that's why it's progressive. There's nothing to halt it.
Okay.
So no, it's available.
So when you say there's medicine that will slow it down, is that kind of like how does the medicine that slows it down, how does it work? If that makes sense.
To be honest, the nitty-gritty bit of how it works, I think it'd be quite complicated, but it's only for Alzheimer's.
Okay.
And then there's quite a medical history that they would have to do to see if that medication would be suitable for the person to take them, depending on other medications they're on, and also their general health.
Does genetics have a play in how dementia?
There is, you know, if you've got what we call the APOE gene, you know, it could. It doesn't really mean you're going to definitely get dementia, because remember, you know, if we take vascular dementia, that's quite lifestyle. You know, in terms of obesity, high blood pressure, you know, you're more prone to having a stroke or a heart condition, which could lead to vascular dementia.
Okay. And can we talk a little bit about symptoms that you can look out for?
Okay, like the symptoms, I know most of the times we think, oh, dementia, oh, loss of memory or loss of short-term memory. And that is only just one of the
Yeah.
symptoms. All right. In addition to that, you've got confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So you could go for a walk around the block and you're thinking, hang on, I don't know where I am,
Mm-hmm.
because you've got absolutely confused where you are. And that could apply shopping or anywhere else. Um, Even daily tasks, they forget how to do things. If you're just making a cup of tea, you're thinking you might be forgetting the sequencing of actually carrying out a very simple task that we do automatically,
Mm-hmm.
and also language and understanding. So, you could be looking at something, you're thinking, I know what that is, but you can't remember. So if I just take a mug or a cup, we know it's a mug or a cup, but we can't find the name
Mm.
mug or a cup to actually say what it is.
Mm.
So there's that. So not finding the words, and also following a conversation, where you just cannot be part of that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also behavior changes. You might become depressed or more anxious or more irritable.
Mm.
So there's a number of symptoms, not just memory loss.
Yeah, and I can imagine they might start off as maybe small things, but even
Yeah.
small things like that, like forgetting that a mug is called a mug or a cup, it
Yeah.
can really be quite emotionally distressing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we have to remember, there's normal forgetfulness, which, everybody sometimes got the stress thinking, oh my God, what have I come up here for? But that is kind of normal. So really, it's looking at other symptoms as well.
Yeah, okay. And so, like, maybe looking out for when it becomes more frequent.
Yeah, what I would say, if you think, well, and that the person, say, you're living with, because they tend to notice it more, the actual person with dementia won't
Yeah.
realize. If
Okay.
it's your family, extended family, they'll think, hang on, they've just asked me that, they're saying it again, and how come they can't make that cup of tea? So it's symptoms like that. And if you do experience anything like that, what we've got is on our website is a symptoms checklist, and it's good to actually download that to go through it and make an appointment with the GP, because sometimes it could be something else. So your GP will do a basic memory test and some other blood tests to rule out other diseases, and then if he or she feels right, this could be dementia, they refer you to memory clinic.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well, like maybe with family members and things like that, it can really be a lot for the people around you to take
It
on as
is.
well, because I worked a little bit as a care assistant, and one of the residents who I looked after had dementia, and it was really took a lot out of you to see someone suffering in that kind of way.
Yeah,
And
yeah. It is a lot, because I think whether it's your mom or your dad or your husband or your wife or your grandparents, and physically they seem exactly the same,
yeah.
but mentally they're completely different person.
Yeah. No, it is. It's hard to take on, because it is very hot and cold as well sometimes, from what I
Yeah.
experienced, because it was like one moment I was being told that, oh, I love you, and then the next moment it was
Yeah.
like, oh, I hate you, and
Yeah.
going from those extremes. And again, if dementia is something that you've never really encountered before, and it was my first time seeing that, it was a lot to process.
Yeah, and it's almost, you think, hang on, if you're not aware of what dementia is, you think, oh, they're just doing it
Yeah.
on purpose.
Yeah, and that brings me really well onto my next question. So a lot of people would say that being forgetful is just part of aging, and I imagine there's a lot of misconceptions around that.
I mean, like I said earlier, yes, forgetting, we all forget things time to time, but that is completely different. And I think, especially in the South Asian community, it's that, it's because we're getting old. That's why we can't remember. but it's not about getting old. There's so many other symptoms, and there's actually, if you have an MRI, scan of the brain, it shows physical changes in the brain itself. So it's not to do with age, and we're getting an increased number, of people in the 50s getting it. So it's not about aging. So that's a misconception that we have to kind of put into the background.
Are there any other misconceptions aside from aging that we should be aware of?
I think, well, in the South Asian community, they think, all right, oh, that person must be going mad. The word bargo, but it isn't about being mentally a mental disease at all. It's physical.
Yeah.
And we actually have done the Alzheimer's Society. One of the main objectives of this year's was for the South Asian community to get diagnosed. And there's been videos, discussion videos, and a lot of information on the Alzheimer's website.
And I suppose as well with dementia, it doesn't just make you mentally vulnerable, but also physically vulnerable, because I suppose if you maybe go for this is just the first thing that's coming into my head, but a walk in the middle of the night, and you maybe have forgotten the dangers of doing something like that, maybe where you are.
Exactly, yeah. And we do have cases where it's like, they'll be packing their bags 2:00 in the morning and they're going out.
Yeah.
Or they think, right, I'm going home now, and because they think they've lived somewhere else because they've regressed back to, say, when they were 20 or 30. So that, they could look in the mirror and think, hang on, who's this old man or who's this old woman? Because they're 20 or 30.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I heard exactly a case where someone looked into the mirror and just didn't recognize their own reflection.
No.
Yeah.
So, so it's really disheartening that way.
So moving on to my next question. Early diagnosis. How important is early diagnosis, and what difference can it make?
Okay. An early diagnosis is very, very important. Again, just to bring South Asian families, by the time it comes to them being diagnosed, they've had dementia for quite some time. And that early diagnosis allows you to plan for the future, And again, if we take Alzheimer's, there might be okay to go on a medication, which might slow it down. It also opens up, what care, what support is available, and sort of medications for other symptoms that they might have, financial benefits. So it's putting everything in place. It's like we talk about lasting power of attorney quite a lot. You want to give that lasting power of attorney to people you think, right, your son or your daughter or whoever to take over. But then if it's so far gone and you haven't got the mental capacity, then you can't do that. So that's why we think it's very important to be diagnosed early so that you can plan for the future.
Yeah, I suppose it also gives that person more control over, in a situation where it might feel like they're losing control.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's almost like, okay, like a lot of people, we come across, it's always a relief to get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because you think, right, okay, he or she's acting like that because there is this condition. And then you can plan accordingly to address what needs to be put in place and so on.
Yeah, almost kind of like a safety net, I suppose.
Yeah.